Alright guys, welcome back to Teal House Farm. Today I'm going to show you how I'm going to put up some beets. And the reason I'm showing this to you is because I'm hoping it'll be an encouragement. Sometimes our gardens don't go as planned, right? And you guys know we've been struggling this year because not only did we try a new type of gardening with our no-till garden, it also has been a drought. And so some of my plants didn't make it at all. Some of them did make it, but they weren't the best produce. And some of them are thriving, which are still out there. So the beets, they did okay, but they aren't very large, and sometimes that can be really discouraging because you have this smaller than expected, root vegetable or whatever, and you're like, well, what am I going to do with this? And it feels like it's not worth the effort to try to put it up, but it usually is, and we can still use every piece of it, even if it's not as the desirable size that we might like it to be. And so I'm going to put all of it up today, and I'll just show you how even a small harvest, if you are careful and are sure to use every piece, you can actually still put up a decent amount of food, and it's going to be worth it to you in the winter. You're going to have that home cooked food, that great organically grown or just locally grown. If you're not super into the organic gardening, that's totally fine. It's still something you grew yourself, which can be full of nutrition for your family. So with the beets, we're going to use everything. We're going to use the beet. Yes, Annie. Okay. With the beets, we're going to use every part. We're going to use the actual beet part here. I already separated them out. I put them in this jar. And like I said, they're not really that big. Okay. Kind of like a large radish. Not even close to what I've had in the past, but it's okay. It's still edible beet. So I just have this Tupperware full of what's left from the garden this year, what I hadn't already picked. So these are a little bit smaller than I would desire, but we're going to put these up as a pickled beet. You want to help me, Ivy?
What are you supposed to do?
I'm going to do some canning.
Are you doing live stream? Are you doing live stream?
No.
I'm helping Micah.
Okay.
For maybe a second.
Okay.
We'll see about it. Alright, you take a turn.
We're going to can these. We're going to make a pickled beet, and we're going to do it in half pints. I'm the only one who eats pickled beets. I love them, especially when I'm pregnant. I love anything tangy and pickled. And so it's not going to make very many. I'd guess maybe 4 or 5 half pints with these pickled beets. I'm going to pickle them with some onions to help them stretch out over a few extra jars. But it's still going to be a nice treat for me and something that I enjoy having, as a kind of like a side or even on top of a salad. So what I then did, so those are the beet part of the beet. And then when I harvested them, what I did is I cut off the leaves, and I cut off as much of the stem as I could and left it on the tops here. So these are the beet tops, and I've already rinsed them twice. And I kind of have to go through and pick off the yucky ones still, which we'll do together. But I am going to cut the stems off, and we're actually going to ferment the stems with this Mason Top fermentation kit. I'll link this below. This is the easiest way to ferment. You do not have to own this to ferment, but this makes it easier because it makes sure that everything stays under the water line, and it has the nice top so you don't have to burp your ferments, which you'll need to do. So if you don't have this, you can absolutely do it without it. I think this is like $50. I think it's worth the $50. It makes fermenting it takes all the questions out of it and makes it really, really simple. So we're going to ferment just the stems. So we're going to cut the stems. These almost have the consistency of like celery. So I'm going to ferment these in a ginger, red pepper spice ferment that we'll make together and I'll throw in some carrot sticks. I'm going to throw in some jalapeno slices. Like I said, I like spicy, tangy things when I'm pregnant. So this is going to be a lovely snack to keep in the fridge. It will probably only make 1 jar, and that's totally okay because it's something I'm really going to enjoy. And then left over, we then will have the leaves. Now, you can can beet leaves just like you would spinach. You usually do want to remove stems, which is why we're saving the stems for fermenting because they just are kind of crunchy. You can eat these raw, like on a salad, and you can cook with them a lot. It's basically a spinach replacement. So if you use spinach for something, you could do it with the beet leaves, okay? They're great for you. I believe they have a lot of iron in them. They have a lot of other stuff in them. I can't name it off the top of my head. I am not going to can these because I don't feel like there's enough of them to make it worth canning. And so I'm actually going to freeze these leaves, and then I'll just be able to pull out chunks anytime I want to add a spinach equivalent to something. So I use it a lot. I use spinach or beet leaves a lot in like stir fries. I like to throw it especially in like egg scrambles. I love spinach or beet tops in my egg scrambles in the morning. So I actually use quite a bit of frozen spinach. So this will go pretty fast. But since I don't have very many, and also since I didn't do any sort of pest control on these, they're just not beautifully perfect. And if they canned, that can kind of disrupt your canning because they can disintegrate if they're not the best. So freezing is really the best way to go with these, and they will be delicious. So we're gonna get everything ready, and we're gonna start with the easiest first. We're gonna go easiest to hardest. So we're going to freeze leaves, which is the simplest thing. Then we're gonna get our ferment set up, and then we'll can our pickled beets. So let's get this work going. So when I rinsed the leaves twice the day that I picked them, and then I let them be just slightly wet, put them in the refrigerator with this cloth over there, and they've been in the refrigerator 3 days now, and they still look decent. So that's, if you can't take care of them right away, that's the best way to keep them from being all wilted in your fridge. Let's go. We're gonna put leaves in this bag and stems in the bowl. If it's real tiny like that, we just throw it in the bag. But these long woody stems, we want those in the bowl for fermenting, and leaves in the bag for freezing. Once that bag is filled up, I'd say we have pretty close to about a 16-ounce bag there, just like a bag of spinach you'd get at the store. And we're gonna seal it and squeeze all the air out and just throw it in the freezer just like that. Then we're gonna get out our fermenting tops here, and it comes with this great recipe book, so we're just gonna follow the book. I'll link this product below. It really is nice that everything's in there. We're gonna make 2 different types, ginger, and we're gonna do this garlic ferment too. I'll put those recipes below, but I'll walk you through them real quick. We're gonna need weights and lids. Make sure you read the instructions to remind yourself about just getting your jars and your weights ready, and then we're gonna load it up. So here's the stems. We split them between the 2 jars, and then we are going to add some carrots. And I have this jalapeno in my garden that kind of got away from me, so you can see it's starting to turn purple. So it's really ripe, so we're gonna use it for the ferment here. So in both jars we have stems and carrots, and in one jar we added the jalapeno. We'll also add a few slivers of ginger on top, and then that jar is done. In the second jar we have stems, carrots, and we add some garlic and some red pepper flakes. Put our weights on top, and then we're gonna add our brine in to make sure that everything is submerged under the brine. And then our special ferment lids go on top, and then we put rings to keep them in place. And we're ready to go. Sits on the counter for a couple of weeks at least. Now the next project's pickling these beets, so we're gonna wash them, cut out any bad areas or just extra stem that's kind of hanging on there. And we're gonna put them in a pot to boil. See, I don't have very many, but we're still gonna make a lot of food. Boil them for 10 to 15 minutes, and then we're going to drain off some of the water and reserve that water for our recipe, and then drain the beets the rest of the way. Let them cool there, they're super hot. So while they're cooling down, we're going to get out our water bath canner. We're gonna fill it up, and we're gonna get 1/2 pint jars ready for sterilization. So they'll need to boil in here about 10 minutes to be sterilized so that they're safe for water bath canning. So we load the canner up with water, and then we take our clean jars and we're gonna add them to the rack and then lower that into the pot to be sterilized. Now that our beets have cooled off a bit, the skins slide right off, so we put those away, and then we are gonna just chop them into whatever size you want your pickled beets to be. I like them a little bit thicker, so we're doing them like that. The skins will head out to the compost pile. I don't really think there's much I could do with that, or anything that's really worth the effort at least. And then I'm also gonna dice 2 onions, because I really like pickled onions in my pickled beets. So I'm just using a standard white onion here, but you could use any kind you want. Then into our pot, and we're going to make the brine to pickle them. So we add a cup of our reserved water from boiling the beets. Then we're also gonna add 2 cups of white vinegar. We're going to add 2 cups of sugar, just regular old white sugar. And we're going to add a pinch of cloves. If you had to ask me what a pinch was, I'd say it's probably a couple tablespoons worth, just the whole cloves in there. We're gonna bring that to a boil, and then we're ready to jar. So I use a flat spoon to scoop in the beets and onions first, And then I'm going to use a ladle to make sure you get lots of brine. And then after you fill them with brine, you need about a 1/2 inch head space. And then you want to debubble the jars. That means run a plastic knife around the inside to make sure you shake out any bubbles that are trapped in there. Once you've done all that, you can wipe the rims with a damp cloth and then put your sterilized lids on and your rings to fingertip tightness. Put them on the canning rack into your canner, and then you're going to process them 10 minutes. Processing starts when they hit a rolling boil. So there we have it. From just, I think it was 12 smaller sized beets, we have 2 ferments going. We have 4 pickled beet half pints, and we have about a 16-ounce bag of frozen beet tops in the freezer.